talk a little bit about the role of being a promise keeper. Because we think about roles in our families, we think about roles in terms of someone who's a negotiator, we think about diplomacy, we think about humor, we think about so many different things, but that's not necessarily something that we really talk about all the time, is the ability to develop the art form of being a promise keeper, whatever that may mean for you in your life. And there are promises that are explicit, where you say them out loud, and then there are promises that are implicit, that might be part of a culture or a norm. I was talking to a really wonderful young lady recently, and she was talking about how she had worked with a number of people who were refugees, and how she had to explain to them, you know, I said, well, what really stood out to you? And she said, well, you know, they were from rural Africa, and they would leave their apartment sometimes, and the oldest child in the apartment would be 7 years old. And I would explain to them, that's horrible. You can't leave children alone with a 7-year-old. And I said, well, think about how this woman grew up. And of course, in rural Africa, you know, where there's not a lot of cars, or if any, maybe one, you know, the implicit promise is that all the children are always taken care of by the elders that are there. And then she came to this country, and it's a complete paradigm shift, right? There is an implicit promise that if you go into a penitentiary somewhere, I don't know if anybody's followed the news about what's happening over in South Carolina. This is a 1,500 person penitentiary. It's maximum security. The implicit promise, if you're incarcerated, and this is certainly very important for all of the Amity faculty, is that, you know, there's safety and security and so forth and so on, and that you're taken care of, and the people that are there have some safety and security. And this particular institution blew up, started having some fights, and the officers waited 4 hours for reinforcements before going in. It took 8 hours to calm it down, by which time 17 people were hospitalized and another 7 were dead. So the implicit promise of safety and security was really not kept. If you look at Chavez Ravine, anybody here know the story of Chavez Ravine besides me? Was it? Okay. All right, Angelino, yeah, okay. Chavez Ravine is where Dodger, you know, it's now Dodger Stadium, and it was probably one of the most vibrant Mexican-American communities in the United States. I mean, it had all the stuff that you see in central Mexico. It had plazas, and they built a church, and it was very colorful, and it was kind of like San Miguel, and it had all the traditions. And a lot of people settled there because there was prejudice against them living in other places in Los Angeles. So they took this little ravine and they turned it into something really beautiful. And the promise was, you know, they had purchased their own land, and they were going to live there forever, and there were generations of people. And whoops, you know, the city council got together with somebody else, and they cut a deal, and they told everybody, we're going to be building beautiful, affordable housing. You're going to have the first pick. And then whoops, that deal went under the table, and literally the city went in and bulldozed the houses under eminent domain and took it and built Dodger Stadium, right? So those are implicit promises that get broken sometimes. You know, it's kind of a creepy, it creeps up on you. You know, when in terms of fascism, Mussolini's famous statement was, if you pluck a chicken one feather at a time, nobody will notice until the chicken is completely bare. So we're at a point right now, because we've got a lot of really good things going on at Amity. We've got hopefully 2 new campuses that are opening up in Los Angeles. Doug is doing a lot of work on health insurance. We've got a lot of stuff that's kind of rolling, that we take some of our implicit promises and make them explicit. Because as we bring more people on and you know, hire more folks, it's very important that we state our promises out loud. Now, one of the, you know, the promise that we always strive to live up to is our mission statement, right? Just like ideally, you know, what Emma Lazarus, it's not a mission statement, but what she wrote, it's on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, was an implicit, you know, it's kind of a promise. Give us your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, and so forth and so on. So our mission statement is, Amity Foundation is dedicated to the inclusion and rehabilitation of people marginalized by addiction, trauma, criminality, incarceration, homelessness, and violence. We strive to improve health, environmental, and social justice. Amity is committed to research, development, implementation, and dissemination of information regarding community building. So that's an umbrella promise. So if you look at that particular mission statement, which is our stated charitable intent, if you look at it and you think about it, could we go to help out in a hurricane in Texas under that mission statement? Sure, right? Because it's talking about homelessness. Could we go into a city that had just been ravaged by a riot and violence and be of aid? Of course we could. See what I mean? The idea is that it's broad enough to be inclusive, and that it's incumbent upon every single one of us to figure out ways in our own style and with our own dance steps how to make it manifest in our daily life. Here when we're here and when we're at work. The word promise is a good word because it's a yes word. If you start thinking about all of the other words, promote, it's a yes. Promontory, it's kind of a piece of land that goes out there to the sea and sticks its neck out. Okay, proactive. These are all kind of it's a positive, and that's our promise. Okay, that's the promise that we strive to live up to, and we have to notice, like, who are the people that get left out? When Mark and I very first started, and then more and more people came, the promise was, let's look for the people around Arizona that for whatever reason don't end up getting to a place like this. So our average person, I think, had been thrown out of something 9 times, I think. And we would just call up agencies and say, okay, who are you tossing out? Send them to us, because we want to see what we can do for people that are the most marginalized. Okay. In our traditions, it says, our tradition number 5, our communities are based on information authenticity rather than power and control. Our corporate structures exist to serve the community, meaning the triangle supports the circle. So if our circle of community keeps growing and we need more kind of administrative help and support, then the triangle gets bigger. But you don't ever want the services to be fed off of by the corporate structure, because then you end up in a situation where you have a whole lot of people making money off of folks that aren't really getting services. And we've watched that occur in our prison system. Amity was very instrumental in getting the first restorative justice prison built in Japan. And it's very, very clear, and even though it was built by a lot of large corporations, at least, during the years that Rod and I and Tori were over there, it was very, very clear that the recidivism reduction and the care of the guys that were going in there was prime. That was the most important thing. I mean, down to the fact that they came to LA and they interviewed our guys and said, what do you hate the most about prisons? And they said, we hate standing on line. So when Rod and I got there, Rod-san, Naya-san, look, no lines. And they'd figured out how to build robots to serve people food. So when people went into the prison dining room, nobody stood on a line. That's how serious they are. Pretty serious. Okay. We're going to talk about the explicit promise of community membership.
50 years ago, I was quite a bit younger. And I was, Martin Luther King had just been assassinated. The country felt like it was really in turmoil. I was living in a neighborhood with 2 young kids. The school, which was across the street, was bombed. It was a racial incident. It was in Oakland, California. And just a few months later, I moved into a community. I really felt the need at that particular point to do something. And I knew I couldn't do anything by myself. I had to join with other people. And I got involved in an organization. One of the attractions of that organization was that it was completely racially mixed. There was not the kind of prejudice and violence and hatred that was really endemic at that particular point in our society. So we're all sitting here together today, and this is kind of unusual. If you had a big corporate meeting at another organization, it wouldn't look like this. And you're here, we're all here together because we're all members of this community, every one of us. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is how important that is for everybody to understand and participate as a member. Now, of course, for all of us who are employed, who get a paycheck from Amity, we have a job. We have a job description, right? And every year, or usually every year, sometimes we miss it, but there's an evaluation. People give you some feedback on your job. The thing we have not really been doing, and it's really important that we initiate that, and that's what we're doing today, is to really recognize that all of us are also, we are first members of a community. And over the years, therapeutic communities have been around for 60 years. This is actually the 60th anniversary of the founding of the first therapeutic community in the United States, in California. And it's really interesting. I've been involved in it now for 50 years, so I have a pretty good grasp of the history. And it's very interesting that most of the organizations that were our colleagues have either disappeared, they no longer exist, or they've changed very, very much and have really lost the aspect of community, which is so powerful. And so we want to make sure as we go forward that we don't follow that particular path. We don't need to stay for the end of this movie. We kind of know how it ends because we've been watching a lot of organizations that have not taken steps to revitalize their commitment to community. We've seen how what happens to them. And as they say in the movies, it ain't pretty. Okay? So that's what we're doing here today. It's really wonderful to have you all here today on this morning to do this together.
We're all a part of this. My story is a part of it. For the first time in my life, I could be who I really am here and still be accepted. Excuse me. And that was such a great experience. And it's been such a wonderful thing being able to get to know everyone, students, faculty, everybody. And I think that's so incredibly important. So I wanted to share that because I think it really speaks to what we do here. You know, it isn't because of your position or, you know, who you are, or what you know, it's really about your ability to be able to open up and share yourself with each other.
I just want to share a little bit about membership. So this will be the third generation of my family that has been connected to Amity, with my parents, then myself and my sister, and my niece. And so membership to me is far more than any job, or being part of this community is far more than any job title. We've learned a lot of roles here. It's really been important for my family and for the community here. Certainly have learned to be a father here, learned to be a friend, and learned how to really work in teams here. So really appreciate everyone being together. Today we're going to be doing this, just so all of you know, at all of our campuses at Amity over the next few weeks. So, you know, membership is at this campus, but we're all part of a larger community. And when I think of Circle Tree Ranch, I was just on talking to folks in the prison yesterday, and they wanted me to send them pictures of the campuses so they could see them in the prisons that we work in. And so we work with about 2,000 men and women a day inside of the prison system in California. And they're always very interested in what the community members are doing here, what they're doing in California, and trying to give them some kind of hope. Some of them never may be released and never may be reunited with their family. We've been fortunate to be able to do that for a lot of our community members. Just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and then also the larger membership. When I come in every morning, it was great because we have our little bus stop, and we have our little community members as well too, that I want, so we have us as the adults to set an example, but the other part of our role here is to really set examples for our smaller community members, which are our children, and the role that they'll play. And I was actually one of those little members of the community here about 33 years ago.
Yeah, he was so cute.
And my niece today, my daughter, they get to be a part of a community as well and be a member as well. So I just want to share that, because for me it's a lot more than just a job. My first job here was actually mowing all the grass, which I found out was an endless job at the ranch and would never be completed. But the bigger thing is all the friendships that have created here. And I just want to thank all of you. The work you do here and just everything that you're doing to build community and be members is so much bigger than what you're doing here. It opens so many more doors. A lot of what we're able to do is because of what you're doing here today. So I really want to thank you for that. Naya mentioned a few other campuses. We're working on starting a women's and children's campus in California that will hopefully allow us to do what we're doing here at Circle Tree Ranch. That would not be possible without all the demonstrations that take place here. So just want to thank you all.
Membership, the essential element of the teaching and therapeutic community, jobs and roles. It is the intention of Amity Foundation to ensure that it remains mission-driven with focus on its stated charitable purpose. Towards this end, exposure, understanding, participation in, and contribution to Amity services is prime. Amity is an intentional community formed for the purpose of creating an environment in which people of all ages can learn to grow beyond that which has wounded them. This includes family reconciliation. Amity's model is based on more than 6 decades of evaluations and outcome research on the therapeutic community, used throughout the world as an effective, evidence-based methodology. Over the past few decades, Amity evolved into a teaching and therapeutic community. The foundation embraces the additional responsibilities of social, environmental, and economic justice. Amity is more oriented towards team building, gender and culture responsiveness, and less hierarchical than the original United States TC models around the country today.
The TC model is predicated on the proposition that a holistic and vital community is essential for individual socialization, intellectual and emotional growth. The community itself is the method. Personal growth occurs in the therapeutic milieu, not from a therapeutic connection to one individual therapist, but to the community. Example, too many people. This accelerates learning, develops consistency, the formation of authentic relationships, and personal responsibility. The discovery of talents previously unrecognized or not validated emerge. Every person contributes to the emotional climate, which is supported by a set of standards manifested in the physical environment. The physical environment reflects attributes individuals have the potential to develop. Spaces for work, sanctuary, learning, recreation, family, meditation, culture tolerance, and diversity. Exercise, art, and music are represented, encouraging the range of human potential.
A key requirement of the model is that all involved, whether employed as faculty, administrative personnel, or participating as students, are affiliated primarily as members of the community. Membership takes many different forms. In the job realm, people have vested authority related to their skill base. Community membership represents personal authority, the development of roles, earning respect, and developing relationships. Those employed by Amity have official position descriptions. These job descriptions will be used as guides. They're not all-inclusive or fixed. From time to time, faculty/employees may be asked to work on special projects or to assist with other work necessary or important to the operation of Amity. Cooperation and assistance in performing such additional work is expected. Amity reserves the right at any time, with or without notice, to alter or change job responsibilities or locations, reassign or transfer job positions, or assign additional job responsibilities. That particular piece of poetry was inserted by our attorneys. Okay, as you can tell, right? Clunk. Okay, all right. Anyhow, okay. Now back to what we wrote. Okay, even though the attorney reviewed all this to make sure we weren't getting too crazy. All faculty are regarded as part of the circle of community, outside the hierarchical corporate structure, irrespective of what their position is in the organization. Community and service are prime. The corporate structure exists to support it. And just a takeaway, historically, therapeutic communities started with activities, and the corporation formed to support it. That's actually the historical evolution of this. Towards this end, every position has a responsibility to maintain the standards of the physical environment and make a contribution to the emotional climate. Robin?
For faculty, the position description and directives from supervisors define the job. Membership in the community is really about one's role. Your supervisors will work with you to determine and establish activities that you can engage in to fulfill your role in the community. Community membership can be facilitated by role modeling, demonstrations, participation in community activities, service activities. Faculty who directly teach have more opportunities to participate in community, but also need to establish their membership roles through activities that enhance the community but are outside the requirements of their position. Having faculty demonstrably participating as members of the community is crucial for fidelity to the Amity model and its success in achieving the missions of our organization. Membership activities are part of your paid work time.
So during your annual evaluation, you will be assessed on your job skills and job performance and your participation as a member of the community, inclusive of physical environment and emotional climate. Ability to work as a team and implement Amity's mission are part of all evaluations. Supervisors will be evaluated on their team's contribution as community members in addition to their own. I'll just say with that as well too, I work a lot with some of the corporate stuff that we do, but my most important role here is a community member, far from any job that I do at Amity. And so people like myself and many of us who work here wouldn't be allowed to work in those kind of corporations. We don't want to become that, we will not become that, and this is part of an effort to ensure that that does not happen.
And we're asking the students to demonstrate community. We have to be a part of that.
That's right.
I mean, that's not fair. We can't ask you to do
Right.
something that we're not going to do, really. So,
And just one hopeful note, because we're talking about a lot of our sister organizations have given into the corporate creep, you know what I mean? And Regina knows this and so forth. However, it's a very different picture in Australia. It's a very different picture all over Europe. In Australia, the therapeutic community is actually supported. It's supported by the government. It's a completely different ballgame. We're having some people come here in September, as a matter of fact, right? Yes. From Australia. And in Europe, our European sisters and brothers in this work are much closer in terms of what we do, in terms of their environments, in terms of their inclusion, in terms of saying, well, hey, there's a place in Italy I have an enormous amount of respect for that's been including boy soldier refugees from Africa 14, 15-year-olds that were handed automatic weapons at 9 or 10, that were living on the streets in Rome, and they're just kind of going out and finding these kids and pulling them into community. So it's a very different picture outside of the United States. So it isn't like the whole movement is tanking. It's just we're in a period right now in our nation where we've got a lot of homage paid to the corporate, to corporations, let's say, rather than a community. And then lastly, just for everybody that's here, it's just important to remember that what we do every day comprises the childhood memories of the children that are here, okay? So, you know, when you walk through, if you smile or you remember the kids' names or you stop at the bus stop, which, you know, Doug and I both did this morning, we are the children's childhood memories. And you can all think of people, you may not remember their names anymore, but you know, there's like the mean lady down the street from where I live that didn't like kids and didn't like cats. You know, and I'll remember what she looks like till the day I died. I'll remember how I went with a big can of tuna fish oil and I put it all the way around her porch when she was, when I was about 10. So every stray cat in the neighborhood came to my house. You know, and I'll remember that too. So, you know, but
She probably remembers this.
yeah, but remember, we are the children's childhood memories, okay? So it's just important for us, okay. One of the things we want to do is make sure that this is an explicit, not just an implicit promise, okay? You know, like you have seen me on Saturdays, you know, begging for help, moving the bear and planting roses, you know, the stuff that I do. And everyone has different ways of being part of the community. So part of this is making it explicit to everybody, including all of the faculty, that, you know, there's a responsibility for environment, there's a responsibility explicitly to add to the emotional climate and the physical environment. Because we haven't made it, it's been implicit for a lot of us for a lot of years, and we had some different people, because I travel around Amity, and I'm very thankful that a lot of people recently said to me, but Naya, when I said, hey, you want to help put the picture up on the wall in your office? And people said, but Naya, that's not part of my job description. And I said, oh my God, thank you so much. You are totally right. So we've got to make sure that we include that and make it explicit.
Okay, now it is. Okay, so, yeah, and you know, there's a lot. I think some of the changes you can expect they're not really dramatic. Over in Los Angeles, we started by getting a group of guys I've been having circles with who said, let's start serving meals, okay? Let's have faculty serve some meals. It's not part of your job, it's part of your role to kind of go in and meet students in a different way, not as an authority figure, but as in service. We're going to ask, you know, for our home office people, hey, come on out and come to Community Circle, you know, or come to one of the other community meetings just to get familiar with the community and how the community operates, because they're really responsible in a lot of ways for keeping this thing afloat. You know, while we're doing all the things we're doing, they're kind of paying the bills and making sure the electricity doesn't go off, you know, and processing payroll and dealing with all the contracts we have. They should have an opportunity to see the fruits of their labor, okay? So we'll invite them out. For some of us, for many of you, you're already doing it, okay? Every time you are in a circle with other faculty members, every time you come to Community Circle, you are reaffirming your membership role in the community. Every time you see one of those kids kind of saying, hey, what are you doing on the roof? You shouldn't be up there. You are affirming your member. That's not your job. That's your role, okay? When you see somebody and they're kind of looking like a little sideways, and you go and put your arm around them, that's not your job. That's your membership in the community. The fact that you care and that you are demonstrably reaching out to somebody. So there's all kinds of different ways, and we'll figure that out so that everybody will know, oh, here's some things that I can do.
And input is welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, our youngest people get this really well. We're touring some people from LA that are, you know, multimillionaires and they're gonna, help out and all this good stuff. And one of the youngsters was there and came up to me and said, "Is that a tour?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a tour." He said, "Okay. Well, I was gonna go ride my bike, but I live here, so I just better go introduce myself and kind of, tell everybody, it's a good situation here for kids." And I said, "Okay." Went up, introduced himself and welcome to Amity, But it was really, really lovely. And the gentleman that was here really commented on it. He said, "Wow, that kid is a real proprietor." And I said, "Yep."
One of the very, very well-known guy who's a professor of law, 25 years at the University of Arizona, and I wanted to introduce him to Amity, and we went and had just met for a few minutes at a restaurant. I took Elias with me. The thing he remembered about the meeting was Elias. I don't know if he remembered anything I said, but so he spoke up as a member of the community and really gave that gentleman a real good picture of what Amity is about from his perspective.
So we employ about 100 people a month right now as an agency. Find jobs for. So that's in union trades, that's in movie industry, Caltrans, state jobs, city jobs. And we're continuing to work on that. We're going to be expanding some of that here as well too. It's an important part. To Roki's point, it really does, and to yours, it gives a sense of purpose. I've done a lot of different jobs in these communities, so I have a good understanding of what different jobs are like, and it did give me a sense of purpose. And I think it gives others a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. And then it really is good to better understand each other's jobs and roles in the community. To the healthcare point, we partner with healthcare agencies. We have a clinic at one of our sites in LA. We're not a medical model. I've never met anyone that has changed their life because they had a good electronic health record or because they had a good clinical file, although we have to do all those wonderful things. We partner with groups that provide those services because we provide invaluable services. A lot of what we do is trying to change policy. And the value of what we do is far more than just drug treatment. We're not a drug treatment provider. We provide services like that. That's the first step. The first thing for me was doing that. It wasn't the last step for me. It's like the bare minimum. It's kind of the least thing we're doing here. I think creating more responsible parents, citizens, community members, and then people in the community. So I just wanted to mention that to your point that we are tracking a lot of those things, and we're going to continue to add to that.
This is really something, where you could serve a meal, you could attend a community circle, you might attend an informational seminar that includes students, all fairly lightweight ways of becoming better acquainted with the community, okay? So these are, and we'll figure, as we said, we'll work with the supervisors in terms of what those things are. Some of you remember Rita Craig, who was administrator for us for a number of years. She did an art class in Los Angeles that was probably the most popular thing going. It was not her job. It's something she really enjoyed doing, enjoyed sharing it with the students. And if you go up and down the halls in Rainmaker Hall, all these great paintings were done with that class. It had absolutely nothing to do with her job, but it was a great membership thing that she did. And there's all kinds of things like that, okay?
She was the director of human resources
Right,
too,
right,
so she didn't
right.
have like a small job or a small
So,
position.
and we'll figure that out as we go along.
Your role as a father, as a husband, or as, at home is part of your membership, and actually something that we want people to have balance. I'm a father and a husband, so I do want to make sure, and I have about 200 in-laws. So I have a very busy family life, literally about 200 plus in-laws in Los Angeles, that I'm very involved in that community as well too. And I have a very big membership role in that community. And so for me and for all of our employees and faculty, it's really important that we find that work-life balance. Because what you demonstrate personally with that, the students will all see and learn from, either in a good way or a bad way. We are working on things right now that I can say to where we're going to be trying to cover, and I mentioned this, healthcare for 100% of our employees. 100% employees will not have to pay that portion of it for employees that are with us for 2 years or more, to try to promote retention and to reward some of the folks that have really been with us for a while. We're working on, with that, trying to help cover some of the dependents. We're still in the process of reviewing that and what we can do, because we know that there's a lot of children that are represented by our employees, and we want to make sure that we're a health organization, and so we want to better represent our employees in that aspect. But we ask that people really adhere to this membership addendum to their job description, because part of the evaluation will be based on the membership in the community. We all have job performance, but this is part of that. So we will be evaluating that. We're developing evaluation tools that we'll be implementing and rolling out, and then people will have regular evaluation.
And let me mention too, because a part of this role thing is really important. It took me a while to learn that, and I have to practice it. Your role is to also demonstrate your ability to have balance in your life, right? It's not all or nothing here. It's not.
Right.
Your role is to demonstrate that you have the ability to show up at community activities, you have the ability to do your job, and you have the ability to take care of yourself, take care of your children and your family. That's a demonstration, and that's part of your role, is to demonstrate that. So, you know, we've all got to be healthy. Our role is to demonstrate healthy lifestyles. All that encompasses. It's really important. This isn't about everybody just has to dive in and do whatever there is that needs to be done here at all costs, at all times.
One, we're not asking you to do the membership activities in addition to your regular work schedule. We're just saying, hey, suppose you spend an hour or 2 hours a week or 2 hours a pay period doing things that are really not your job, but are part of your membership in the community. That's all part of that 40 hours or 80 hours. Okay, it's not in addition. Now, some people, like what Rita did, she wanted to do this art class, which she just volunteered to do it. I mean, she, you know, and that's fine too. If you want to do something that's, you know, start a, you know, marathon running club or something like that.
Like the NAMI walk, a lot of people went on that.
Yeah, right. We spent a lot of time thinking, how can we make this a really good place to work? How can we make it a better place to work than it has been? You know.
Better. What are our limits and borders as far as how personal authority goes?
There's always an enormous amount of room, okay? And in terms of personal authority, people that are we've done a lot of things historically. We used to have a pro-family policy. We still do. We don't talk about it explicitly enough. Where if somebody's here and they're doing well and they've got a family member that needs to come in and bang. If you have some ideas about things that, because you're one of the people that's you're real helpful and very enthusiastic and all those things, if you're one of the people that says, hey, I've got an idea, like I think it would be a lot of fun to go, you know, take 10 people and go to the zip line, or let's have another team, not just baseball or whatever. You know, anybody that's in the community that comes with an idea like that, that's a good idea and is willing to kind of stand behind the idea, that's another thing. Another thing that can happen is a lot of times people will call me up and say, so-and-so is in extremis and we don't know, you know, we're scared they're going to die, so forth and so on, and they used to be here. And one of the things historically that people have done when they're students or faculty is they say, look, I'm going to really sponsor that person. And I will take care of them, I will make sure they have books to read, I will check on them every day, and I will speak for them, and will you take them back based on my demonstration? So there's a lot of different ways, and let your imagination run free. You know, the people that have come through Amity as students who have chosen to stand, and faculty that have chosen to stand on the position of personal and not vested authority is how we built the place. You know, and I mean, I wouldn't be standing here without an awful lot of people like you who said, why don't we try this? And that's how this is, you know, social movements and creativity does not usually come from the suits in Washington on down, nor, I grew up in a very academic household, nor does it come from the 13 laboratories at Columbia University where they're running gerbils around in little tanks. It usually comes from people like you.
Look at what's happening out of this terrible thing in Parkland. Look at the courage of those students to stand up and look at the influence they're having. The great thing about, you know, jobs are limited. You have a description, you got to kind of fit in there somehow. Roles are unlimited. Your role can be as big as you are, okay? And your personal honesty, your courage to say the things that are true for you are the things that make this community really grow and thrive. And in that sense, the biggest roles can be in the student body, not necessarily in the faculty, and many times they are.
We have 2,000 and change people behind walls right now in California. The guy that this retreat center is named for, Juan Chavira, who did 14 years in the penitentiary up in Florence for a quarter of a gram of heroin, escaped from Florence twice, okay, was welded in his cell by an old school Warden Iman, you know, came and ran his story, and he said, hey, you know what? You might want to go work in prison, because with guys like me, you know, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get readjusted out here, but you know, you might want to consider that. And we did.
Yeah.
Personal authority.